Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun, and this is our reaction and review for Grotesquerie, Season 1, Episodes 8 and 9. Listen, guys, we are one episode now from the end of this season. Does anyone else out there feel as confused as they were when the show started? I kind of feel like last week things were starting to become clearer. Now I don't know again.
Yeah, I feel like this show is really taking us on a trip. Now that they brought us 7 episodes in to be like, surprise, it was Lois in the coma the whole time. Now going into 8 and 9, I find myself not trusting anything. So I really like that these episodes brought out that idea that Lois could still be in a coma or maybe in a next state, which is something we talked about in our last video. This idea that maybe she's not waking up and maybe it's sort of she's finished this part of the coma or this state and she's now moved into this next spot where she's kind of having this fight over her soul and what's going on. She's in this next dream state. And that's where I'm landing. I think we are getting a double coma.
I was going to say at first, come on, guys, I don't want a double coma. I don't want a triple coma. I don't want all these comas. I just wanted to wake up and actually know what's going on. But then I sat back for a second. Charles Dickens is one of my favorite authors of all time. And A Christmas Carol, I mean, a huge chunk of that book is Ebenezer Scrooge meeting the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And now, with that in mind, I'm kind of sitting here and being like, all right, is coma number 1 Christmas past? Are we in Christmas present now? And then are we moving into Christmas future? It sounds kind of ridiculous, but the reason that book worked is that eventually we did kind of get to see Scrooge on the outside of it, sort of embracing the world differently, and there was a reason why all this matters. If the show can pull that off, I will not be upset. If we end and the final scene is Lois waking up from a coma and we don't see any aftermath, I am going to be steaming in this last finale video. I will be so unbelievably upset.
It is a lot what you just said and what I was talking about with this double coma, because we had this first part of the season that was all about Lois dealing with her past and her guilt and the things that she did, and it was manifesting in all these different ways with the nun and the priest and all these people in her life in different roles in this coma. And now with these 2 episodes, we are looking at her dealing with the consequences of the things that she did and trying to work through the things that she did in her past to be able to move into the present so that she can move into a future, and having these really difficult conversations. But then we have everything moving into that grotesquerie is now in the reality. And there
Yeah.
was one part of it that made me immediately feel like we are still in a coma or some sort of a coma state. But before we get
hmm
into what that is, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are here covering Grotesquerie throughout the whole season. You don't want to miss those videos. We're also covering from We've recently covered American Horror Stories.
Yeah.
If you haven't had a chance to check that out yet, it was a pretty great season. We have those videos for you. And thank you so much to everyone who has joined here.
Thank you guys so much. And if you do want to support us even more, you can join our Patreon. We have a link in the description for that. As of right now, we are exclusively covering the Penguin over there through the end of that season. And moving into November, we have 2 new shows we are covering exclusively there, and Landman on Paramount Plus, and then also Dune Prophecy on HBO. So thank you so much to everyone who has joined
Thank
our
you.
Patreon. That means the world to us.
Let's talk Dexter
Okay.
and blood splatter. Because if
All
I
right.
learned anything from watching Dexter, that it's as you would kill people, there will be a pattern to the blood spatter, and it's not going to be exactly the same each time. When Lois went into the new grotesquerie scene with the family, that blood splatter was exactly the same. They did like a flash of it, the same flash that they had done in the past. So I was just sitting back thinking this would not be the same. So this is either on purpose by the show to let us have a clue that this is still that dream state because you're not able to kill somebody the exact same way, where the blood splatter would be exactly the same in the exact same place, or it's just a mistake by the show.
I don't think, and I don't think it's a mistake by the show, because I think they are clearly establishing that something weird is going on in this reality. I mean, we can say it's a double coma. We can say that Lois is somehow clairvoyant, that she has some sort of special ability for
Yep.
whatever's in her dreams to then be projected into reality. But here's where things get really, really tough, at least for me to struggle to figure out, is that sure, you can make this argument that, okay, we have a new Grotesquerie who is out there, who is somebody who has read Lois's files and this information. But then you look at Megan going to the hotel, a particularly familiar hotel for everybody who watched the first 7 episodes. It's sort of like, okay, well, the new Grotesquerie wouldn't be like calling up Megan and be like, oh, Megan, you should go to this hotel, unless Megan is the new Grotesquerie. And I highly doubt that that's the case based on what we've seen. It's just too bizarre, the amount of coincidences we're kind of seeing here.
Yeah, that hotel that Lois has seemingly not been to,
Yeah.
that Megan is now at, how would that have been in Lois's mind unless we are still in her mind? The only other option here is that the doctors were talking about this idea that maybe she's a prophet and that she is able to see things that are going to happen in the future. And that could explain why the blood splatter is exactly the same, because she's seeing something that hasn't happened yet. Is that where we're going? It's possible, but we haven't really seen any supernatural elements really here so far this
Yeah.
season. So if they decided to introduce that this late in the game, it would be a bit odd.
Here's the biggest thing I'm going back to at this point in my brain, and this is sort of outside of the show and into like the meta commentary interviews and all of that. Now, I know interviews on a show are not necessarily canon. I will
Mhm.
throw that out there, but Ryan Murphy and John Landgraf, who those who don't know, he's kind of like the big boss at FX. Like, they've done a lot of interviews in the past couple of weeks, and within those, Ryan has noted that this is not necessarily a 1 season show. This
Mhm.
is not something that's going to have, a clear cut ending. There's talk, maybe there's going to be some sort of cliffhanger, but when you kind of consider all of this, I don't think that we're going to be entering Grotesquerie season 4 and we're going to be in another dimension of Lois's coma at that point. I think at some point she's going to wake up, if she's not woken up already, and sort of realize this is my purpose in the world. And if we are going in this direction, that Lois is a prophet, bear with me, guys, this is pretty weird, but she's going to realize this maybe in the finale, and then moving into upcoming seasons, it's going to be this idea of how can I then, somebody who is so broken personally, actually use this prophecy for good to provide good things to the world around me. I mean, it's kind of a compelling pitch if you want to do more of the show.
Yeah, and it still keeps you in a bit of that horror state with this show, that if she is someone that can see what's going to happen, are we going to be then maybe moving into next season where she's trying to get ahead of these murders because someone has read her file,
Mhm.
or she has able to see the future, so she's able to get to these places and stop this from happening before it happens.
Now, if we are to say, okay, Lois is not in another coma somehow, this is all reality, who could actually be doing this stuff? It's really not that elaborate a list of suspects at this point, unless somebody
No.
snuck in to the medical offices, had a look see at the file. I mean, the most obvious and ironic situation here is that Father Peloton, aka Dr. Peloton, is now actually killing people all over again, and the show is just repeating itself for the heck of it.
Yeah, and they very well could, because they're trying to really make us think that it's this new doctor, Dr. Whitcomb,
Yeah.
is now the person who's probably doing this. And I mean, it seems like a good candidate, He's been able to interview everybody. He's reaching into the darkest parts of
Yeah.
what was going on with Lois, and he's making everybody kind of turn on everybody by bringing up these things that they didn't really need to know.
Mhm.
Like when he was having these conversations with like Merritt or whoever, and is saying these terrible things that her mother was thinking in this dream, how is that actually helping him get information? It feels like it's not. It feels more like he's just getting satisfaction and hurting people. That's why they're kind of setting him up as like, well, he's the obvious person that's going to be doing this then.
He felt to me like a character on a Real Housewives show who's not really happy with their own life, and they're just gonna sit back and be like, "I'm gonna make everybody else miserable, and I'm gonna cause all these screaming fights." The Dr. Whitcomb is just a messy man. I don't know if there's something more to that, or if he just sucks, and that may very well be the case.
Or is this just the way that they're going to be able to break somebody like Marshall, and then he will end up being the person who's behind these killings? But he would then also have to have had access to these files or heard what exactly was going on to be able to replicate these scenes exactly. And I think the show wants us to think that Marshall's possibly capable of it. We saw Lois going on basically an apology tour to be able
Yeah.
to just deal with things and get closure. We'll call it a closure tour, where she goes to Marshall and Red and she's like, here's divorce papers, laying you off the hook. You can be with your woman. Everything's going to be fine. And he just like is losing his mind, like yelling at her, calling her names, saying she should still die. It's like, what is it you want, Marshall? Like, she is giving you exactly just freedom. Go and do what you would like to do. And he's still upset about it. And I understand he's still upset about Ed, but at this point, it's time to be able to just take the win, take the divorce, get out of there. But he has so much anger towards what Lois did to him. And I understand it. But here's your woman who he doesn't know doesn't want him anymore. But
Yeah.
at that point, he can look towards his future. That's a happier future.
Marshall clearly just sort of wants the world to happen on his own terms. And he sort of feels like if there's going to be somebody who's going to proceed on the divorce, it's going to be me. I'm going to be the one who hurt you. You don't get to be the one who hurts me. And I think there's just a very, I don't want to call it controlling, but there is just a very emotional bandwidth that he has that's pretty limited, that he's not really able to accept things in any other point of view. But then again, is this the real Marshall, or is this just how Lois is perceiving Marshall based on their history, how she thinks that somebody like him would react to everything she's doing?
Well, that's the thing, is she has said, I heard what you said, that you wanted me to die, but not in any kind of like caring way to be like, oh man, you really been suffering through this. Like, I just want you to have relief, or like, it was very angry. Absolutely understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, she has cheated on him. Yes, he's cheating on her too, but cheated on him with their daughter's husband. It's such a deep betrayal. Like, that whole conversation with Merritt, where she was just like, Ed, I expected this. This was predictable. This was gonna happen at some point. But you're my mom. Like, this betrayal is something that has broken me apart. I never expected this from you, even in your state and what was going on, what you were struggling with. Of all the people that you could have had an affair with, you picked somebody that was gonna hurt your own daughter in a way that you can't fix.
I'm going to just say this. There's two beefs I have with these two episodes. And one of them is, I'm sure he's a pretty busy man. And I'm not just saying this to like appease all the Swifties who are watching, because I know we're a huge Swiftie hub here at the channel. But no, I needed Kelce in these episodes. It's this, that if Ed's going to be a focal point, and he shouldn't be a focal point on the level that Merritt is, because that is Lois's daughter, and that's still the main groundwork of everything.
Yeah.
There was just so much talk around Ed that not actually seeing Ed in these two episodes was a little bit bizarre to me. And I just don't know if this was a scheduling thing. I don't know if it was a time thing. But if it's a time thing, that brings me to my other beef here, is that I do think these episodes dragged a little bit at times, where I was sort of sitting back entering episode 9, and I was feeling, guys, you only have a couple of episodes left here. I know that Lois needs an apology tour, but we're having all these long one-on-one scenes and there's not a lot of actual forward movement. I need answers.
Yeah, this was just forward movement for Lois. And I agree. I think that Ed is going to be one of those pieces of the puzzle that she needs to reconcile for herself because she's on a tour to reconcile things for herself. It's not necessarily to give closure to other people, but it is to give closure to herself so that she can live with the things that she's done, move on from the guilt that she feels, and to be able to just have a different perspective on life going forward. But now with these, murders happening in real time or next coma or whatever is going
Yeah.
on, when she came back to Merritt's house, I kind of felt like she should have been at Ed's house. And yeah, I don't know if it was just a scheduling thing or they explained it away with Lois saying he was nothing. He could have been anybody. Like he just was there at the time that I needed what I needed and he was present. So it's not about him. He could be anybody, that she felt like she didn't need to go talk to him about anything because he didn't matter.
Yeah, it's really complicated, but I think that in itself may be really good evidence that this is coma number two because, Merritt certainly wouldn't feel that he's anybody, but Lois, if that's genuinely how she feels, then maybe that is the case as to why we're not seeing him. Now, what I will say was really good about these two episodes is I really like the explanation as to why Megan was a nun, why these people in the first dream
Yes.
state had all these different sort of forms that they were taking, because that was I was wondering it and I kind of had some theories, but how they explained it and put it together was really, really good and not entirely what I was expecting to hear.
I loved the explanations of why we saw, Megan as a nun and
Yeah.
Charlie as, a priest and why they were together and how this was all, just formulating. It was so well done. Like, I feel so satisfied.
Mhm.
I understand what you're saying that it dragged a little bit, but for me, I feel really satisfied. I was on the edge of my seat all week long, waiting to come back after that episode 7. And for
Yes.
me, I did not feel disappointed. I feel like specifically that how they were like, oh, this is why Megan was a nun, this is why Charlie was a priest, this is how it all threaded together, and even what's going on in Megan's real life if they're out of the coma, and how it's connecting to Andrea and how it's connecting to Lois's last case and how she messed it up and how she got forced into retirement, even the purple punch. Everything about this was so well done and threaded together in a way that was blowing my brain. Like the attention to detail of this was just 10 out of 10.
They really put a lot into this show that seemed like it kind of came together really fast and filmed really fast, and now it's on the air. I mean, we're in kind of this Netflix era where, oh, we're gonna film something. We'll see you in 2 years, even though this is Bridgerton and there's not any special effects and there's no
I
reason we
know.
should be waiting this long. But they really put Grotesquerie together pretty quickly. I do think that the visual clues, the ways in which they've sort of told these stories, it's all very deliberate. Yes, for me at times I would like to see it paced up a little bit faster, but that's just because we have seen what this show is like when they're going full throttle, like going back to that just horrible hotel sequence the first time around when we
Wild.
were seeing everything in one shot and how it was played out. And even, the end of episode 9, and I'm just sort of sitting back here and just being like, Ryan, do you just love giving Niecy and Michaela the worst stuff possible to play? Because it was so unbelievably intense. And regardless of whether or not this is a dream, I had no idea what was going to happen in that moment.
Yeah, it's there's enough clues here to feel like this just isn't really happening. I mean, Justin, Megan's man who shows up at this motel
Yeah.
and everything that's happening is repeating something that the doctor said to Lois
Mhm.
that he saw at this lecture. How is that happening? That's not happening. It can't be
No,
happening. And then you've got Megan yelling that it's a dream. You have the blood splatter being exactly the same. Like, this can't be actually happening.
no, it just,
Coma number 2. And I'm just I know
yep.
there's probably gonna be people out there being rolling their face and being like, oh my God, we in another coma. But we haven't I haven't really seen a lot of shows or movies that are like double, triple, quadruple comas. It's like you get to the end and it's like, oh, you were in a coma. It was a dream the whole time.
Yeah.
But the idea that she's ascended into this next stage of coma would be wild to me.
And I think to me, I would really like it as long as they give us something in the finale that sort of allows us to understand what these comas really mean to real Lois once we get to the
Mhm.
actual real world. And I have faith that Ryan is going to do that, especially with this being potentially a multi-season project. It does kind of eliminate the idea of just doing oh, it's all just a dream ending, though granted, there is a tiny chance that he does this because he's daring FX to give him another season, and he'll explain it all next season. And if that is the case, I'm going to be so mad, mostly just at you, Ryan, for putting me through this because I do think that there's meaning behind everything that we're seeing. And I
Yes.
think that there is a chance that we're actually going to have a hopeful question mark end at the end of all this. Like I think we're going to take something away from this that maybe Lois is someone who can actually bring good into the world now.
Yeah, this feels like a show about change and that people at any age or any state can find a way to be able to make those changes of things that they don't feel good about themselves in their lives and that they want to be able to move forward. And there are ways to be able to do that, as hard as it is. And for Lois, it's like as hard as it could ever be. The things that she has done
Yeah.
and participated in to be able to get to the point that you actually want to change things around and you're willing to have those hard conversations and get slapped by your daughter and have the hard conversation with Marshall and his affair. Like, these are not easy conversations to have, to be able to forgive yourself, look at yourself
Mhm.
honestly and move forward, which I think is something that's incredibly difficult to do. I think everybody's capable of it, but many people never will.
I think the most important thing to me entering the finale now is we have a nice core group of people who I think matter. And a lot of times, especially with American Horror Story, you get to like episode 8, there's 8 new guest stars, things are
I
careening
know.
out of control. You're just sort of like, okay, well, what is going on? Are you guys running out of ideas? I think this is designed to be contained in a way where there is a very clear focus heading into this last episode that I think Ryan's known from the start where this show is going to end, at least for this season, where this show is going to end. And I do think we're going to get some of those reveals. Are they going to be satisfying? That's going to be the real question here because this show is so high concept. It's going to be a finale that we either all really like or hate entirely, and it's going to make us very nervous about whatever's going to be coming up next.
Here's the thing about Ryan Murphy. Usually first season Ryan Murphy
Yeah.
shows are excellent, and then the actual finale is kind of like he can't land the plane exactly right. Like,
Yeah.
even Murder House, which I love, I always just pretend that that last episode never happened because it just didn't need to, and that the second last episode was the end, and it's just this beautiful, perfect season of horror. And could that be happening here? We don't know if he's gonna be able to land the plane or not.
No, I'm
I
nervous.
hope so, but with only one episode left, and this idea that they're introducing that these grotesquerie murders are now happening in real life and we've only seen one of them, no, I don't think we're going to get that many answers going into this finale. I think we're going to probably go into season 2, if there is one, still wondering what kind of reality we're in here, because what happened at the end of this episode where now Justin is seemingly dead and Lois has done this, and like, does she even understand or know what kind of world she's in? She's even sat there with Megan, was like, I need you to, cut my arm. Like, I just need to know that I'm actually here or not. And just because she's bleeding doesn't mean that she's actually in the real world. And that's what's kind of wild about it. Is she stuck between these two worlds, or is she still in her dream world, or is she still in reality? I don't know. But are we getting answers in the finale? No way. I
Okay.
do not think so. And I'm okay with that. I'm here for a slow ride. This show has been exceptional. So if they're gonna make me wait till next season, I will be here the minute it drops.
I will be here. I just want give me one answer. You don't have to give me all the answers. Give me something. I'm gonna quote another Dickens story here. I'm just gonna be like going up and being like, please, can I have some more, sir? I just need something. I need a little bit of something to cling to. I will say it is a
Yeah.
pretty terrifying concept. This idea of Lois can't determine whether or not she's in her own reality or
Right.
not because she's so scared of how terrible her own reality is
Right.
that this what we're seeing could actually be it.
Yeah.
That's squeamish. That's the probably the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable watching the show right now.
Yeah, like if she's really either actually stuck between reality and dream world and these things are happening that she's, killing Justin, then she can kind of squeak through it, right? But if she is back in this reality, but in her own mind, she doesn't really know if it's still a dream. You got Megan yelling,
Mhm.
it's just a dream in the corner. She doesn't know if she's awake, that she's at this point being like, I can do whatever I want because I'm still in a coma.
It's so how bizarre is this show? Okay, all right. We'll wrap everything up here, but we will have more on the finale. We'll see exactly what happens. It should be an eventful video, so hit that subscribe button so you guys do not miss that. And if you want to support us more, join our Patreon. We've got that link in the description. We're covering the Penguin exclusively
Mhm.
now, and next month, Landman as well as Doom Prophecy. So much great stuff coming up here. Thank you so much to our
Thank you.
patrons. We'll see you here next time.